Hello there, and welcome to Thank the Maker, a podcast about heroes, princesses, scoundrels, hokey religions, ancient weapons, and all things Star Wars. I'm Adam Russell.
I'm Nick Gambarian.
I am Mike Forrester. It's good to be back with you guys.
Hello there.
Hi.
Now that the hype for Andor is over, what is there to look forward to besides these great Star Wars shirts that I have on, which this bamboo one might be the best thing that I have from Roosevelt's.
You know, the thing with bamboo is you got to have a really airtight perimeter around the garden, because that shit will just grow into the rest of your lawn. You can't stop it.
I feel like you know this from experience.
Oh, we did research.
Okay.
We opted out.
Because you were like, it looks cool until all of a sudden it's not that cool anymore.
So that shirt's just growing right up through like mushrooms in The Last of Us, growing right through your mouth.
Oh, got it. Right. It's we're as we're getting less Star Wars news, we're gonna start branching into other stuff right now.
Not really.
No, just kidding. So I think people are we made the graphic, did the stuff. We're recapping a little bit of Celebration today because Nick wasn't able to be on our podcast when you and I were talking from the hotel room in Japan.
Nor did we have videos, so this time you get to look at our faces while we talk about it.
Which that's what people come here for. You know what I mean? But also just looking at it has been an absolute onslaught of Light and Magic season 3 dropped all 3 episodes of that. Then we had we want to do some coverage on Tales of the Underworld. Talk about that and also figure out what we're going to do all summer.
All summer and the beginning of fall.
That's a
the
lot.
majority of the year.
First half of 2026. And then from June on.
Yeah.
June 2026 on.
Right. And this is kind of I think for a lot of people, I had the space dive experience. I talked with the Dad Batch guys about that, and we have Mosh at San Diego Comic-Con. So there are these little pockets of Star Wars existing, but I think all in all, how are we feeling about this void until The Mandalorian and Grogu, which isn't coming out until the end of May of next year? Literally almost, I think, actually.
Yeah.
A year from today. So we have 365 days to really ask ourselves, besides Star Wars Visions, which is coming out on Disney Plus season 3, which should be very cool. You saw the panel for that at Celebration, Adam?
Yeah, it was sick. It was great. Took a lot of pictures, saw a lot of cool things.
Right. And a really cool process from that whole thing about, just getting more people involved into Star Wars and continuing to make Star Wars a global brand. But, I think for a lot of people, we're all kind of sitting here going we were eating good for the last 4 weeks. For people who were in, Japan, you were eating good. And then it was we're dropping stuff every week. We're doing this. Crazy how quickly it all dissipated now at this point.
I know there are motives for things, strategic motives for things when it comes to the release schedule. But it is really tough for me to get my head around why 3 things would drop all at once in May while Celebration's going on and then have nothing for so long. I would have been really happy to have gotten, Light and Magic right now. I mean, maybe they're all Emmy shots. Maybe that's the reason it all came out as soon as or as early as it did. It's just tough, because not everyone's a podcaster, but we have to think about that too. We're going to cover Tales of the Underworld quite a while after it came out. Same thing with Light and Magic. And that's a little frustrating to kind of navigate, and even finding time to watch all those things and feel like we're going to give them the full attention that they deserve is kind of tough. And then we sit around and wait until October.
There's also the newer aspect of, I feel like a lot of, I mean, I don't want to overshoot our status, but a lot of our contemporaries or friends who have podcasts, they're getting screeners at this point. So their reviews drop on the day that those shows come out. And we don't have that ability, you know? So like we're waiting just like everyone else to watch these things. So I feel like it almost, for me personally, in my opinion, like takes the urgency away. I'm like, oh yeah, we could do Underworld whenever, you know, like the people who covered it already dropped it the second that Underworld came out. You know, here's our review. So we're just not in that boat. So it's almost like, okay, well, we'll do it next week. We'll do it a week from now. Who knows?
Well, let's rewind a little bit and get re-stoked about some stuff. Nick, like we said, you weren't with us there when we did the sort of immediate reaction wrap up, the end of Celebration. Mike and I did in the room before we left. So you want to speak about your experience a little more than just the little bits we've touched on since then, for the people listening and watching?
Yeah. I mean, I think that I'll preface it all with saying Star Wars Celebration is like heaven. I wish it happened every year. I love it. I think it's neither of you were in London, right? No, it's just me and Ryan.
unfortunately.
So it's, you know, it was only 2 years ago, and that's still fresh on my mind. To have two international celebrations, I think showed like a lot of like cracks in how it was run. And because it was only 2 years ago, I feel like felt a little frustrated. Like it was like everyone here basically is a grown adult paying a top dollar, not only to go to this convention, but to spend money and travel to a far off land for the most part, you know? So like the actual experience for like two in a row felt a little like cattle to me, you know? Like I felt like this is a high priced thing that we're doing. So that annoyed me a little bit, but I
Nick,
love
this is
being
supposed
around
to
the
be the positive
community.
part.
I love. Well, I got to be honest with people. Like
Sure.
I love the community. I love what it brings. I love the announcements. There's nothing like being like at the Star Wars stage while an actor comes out and they talk. Like you could just see how happy people are to be there, and that energy is like nothing else that you can experience as a Star Wars fan. Overall, I just think it could be even more exciting, you know. And I think that because it's been two international shows in a row, I think that there's like handcuffs on the like establishment of the convention because of certain things they can and can't do. So it was great. I only went to that one panel, the Ahsoka one with you guys, and we had great seats for that. And again, that energy is just like what you live for. It's the best. It's why you go to Celebration, to feel that energy, to get a surprise, to get an announcement, to be in a room full of people who love the same thing you love and love it pretty much the same way you love it. So it was great. You know, my experience in Japan was definitely heavily favored of being an experience in Japan as opposed to like it being a Star Wars Celebration experience. But it was my first time there. It was my girlfriend's first time there. So we leaned a little bit more into the Japan side of things, more so than the Star Wars side of things. But while we were there, it's just what you dream of. It's the best thing. I wish it was every year. You know, it's really one of my favorite emotional feelings that you could get is just being at Star Wars Celebration.
Well, the first con I ever went to was Star Wars Celebration, and I think until San Diego Comic Con, I had only been to Star Wars Celebration. I had gone to 3 of them by then. So that limited experience at San Diego, and then New York when we did Mosh also, and then Dragon Con. I guess those 3 are the only other non-Star Wars cons I've been to, and it is to your point. Star Wars Celebration is something very, very special. And to me, it's hands down so much cooler than the other cons. Because there is just it's just complete saturation of what we all love, like you said.
Mm-hmm.
The other cons are great and they're huge, but it's like you got to find your little slice of what appeals to you. And that might not be enough for everybody. It's not enough for me necessarily. Like I'll
Yeah,
casually
definitely.
go to whatever con is nearby if we, if we have a mosh or let's say one is in town. Like if I'm on tour or I end up living somewhere else, cool. But it's just none of it holds a candle at all to Star Wars Celebration to me.
Agreed. Yeah.
Right. I think when I was talking to Robbie Fox about this from Barstool on his May the 4th stream, and I said, are you planning on going to, because I think he went to Chicago and that was the last one that he went to. And so I said, are you planning on going to Los Angeles? Because I got to think that after, to Nick's point, for us Yankees, 2 years of international conventions, I have to believe that everyone is going to go to Los Angeles. If you have been like just in terms of being a somewhat accessible city, being huge and having a lot of options, LA is a great choice. Almost in some ways, if they like know how big it's going to be, right? And to the point of what I was saying to Robbie was like, there is such a magic of really seeing, in my opinion, the best of the fans all in one place, because you have people like no one's going to show up to Star Wars Celebration knowing that it's not just going to be, hey, wasn't the original trilogy great? They are sharing everything new about animation, video games, storytelling, park going, all of the novels, new books, all of this stuff. And people are there to be like, that's what I want to see. And you have this beautiful thing where you have 65-year-old men. I literally met a grandpa who was geeking out with a probably 18-year-old girl about how awesome Ahsoka season 2 is going to be. Right. And you're like, this is what I'm talking about, because you're standing in line, which of course, waiting in line is part of the Star Wars experience at Celebration. And you're like, hey, so what does anyone think about this? Like, what's everyone excited about for Mando and Grogu? And all of a sudden, all 40 people around you are having this amazing in-depth conversation everywhere you go. And it's like, that's why I think Celebration for people as Star Wars fans, you have to experience it. Go to the next one, go to LA, because like we literally are going to have, we should talk about this. What do we think is going to be the deal with LA? Because LA is Hollywood. It's the 50th anniversary of Star Wars. In some ways, we have expanded on the storytelling so much further than George could have imagined. George's Narrative Arts Museum is also opening in Los Angeles. What do we think? What's the benefit? The Mandalorian experience in Anaheim was worth the price of the Friday ticket alone.
Yeah.
Seeing all the props, and I mean, I have to believe that they're going to bring out all the big guns for this one.
They have to. And this Lucas Museum of Narrative Art is opening next year. So to your point about LA being everything, I think for anyone who doesn't live there, this is at least a week-long trip. There's just too much stuff to see. Going to the park.
The museum and Disney.
Yeah.
I mean, that's
yeah.
On 3 days that's 5 days. If you do the museum one day, Disney one day, which most people do more than that, that's 5 days right there. So
it's, the LA Convention Center and the downtown LA experience is not something I would choose over Anaheim, for example. But still, it's like 1 degree shy of perfect being in LA for the 50th.
And you're saying that because Anaheim just has the convenience factor. Like LA doesn't have, the LA Convention Center doesn't have hotels connected to it. It's like smack dab in the middle of downtown LA.
Yeah.
So
it's not laid out in such a perfect way. I mean, like the Anaheim Convention Center is built visually like a funnel.
Yeah.
Yes, it's a straight street, but you look at it, that perspective, it's like everything's aiming right there. You come out of the front doors, you go to whichever hotel, you're crossing back and forth. I mean, it's just like, it was purpose built, rather than being like necessity built in a spot.
Right. Well, and just even knowing like how many people, I think vendor wise, like just knowing just almost like knowing the story of what Roosevelt's had to jump through to get the vendor license, to get the the visa and the applications to be able to sell. Like there were the show
Japan,
floor.
you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The show floor was it did feel small this year because of a lot.
Did 2 years ago too.
Yeah, 100%. And so I think this is really going to be the installs are going to be insane. I think like the amount of people, it's cheaper. I mean, you're literally talking all of those places had to ship and send product and get it over there in time and do all this stuff. And a lot of these companies are based in the US, or at least have storage and all of that stuff here. And so I think for a lot of us, it's like this is going to be truly like the show of all shows. Star Wars Celebration 2027 is going to be the celebration to go to.
So what is the date again? April. Okay, so we're going to see, think about what are we going to see from Starfighter? We should go ahead and get into the slate here.
Yeah, sure.
Thinking about what Celebration 2027 might be. Starfighter coming out the next month after that. They're not going to show us the whole movie. They're going to show us a scene, though.
Without a doubt.
That's going to be crazy.
The trailer will probably be out at that point, and we're going to get a deeper dive into it.
It's a month later, so we'll have a trailer.
Oh,
a trailer
6
sometime
months before
next
that.
year, right? Well, a teaser.
Yeah.
So, I mean, who knows what else we've got. Let's go down the slate really quickly, broad brushstrokes.
Sure.
And then talk about maybe what would lead into that, and then talk about our expectations for each of these things.
Sure.
And Mike, to your point that you've been making recently, maybe look at these things in this new context of the post Andor Star Wars culture.
Right.
So upcoming officially announced and confirmed projects, all of which here were discussed at Celebration. Star Wars Visions Season 3. Star Wars Visions Presents, starting with The Ninth Jedi, the longer form story.
Mm-hmm.
The Mandalorian and Grogu movie, May 22nd, 2026. Maul Shadow Lord, sometime in 2026. Star Wars Starfighter, May 28th, 2027. Star Wars Ahsoka Season 2, no release date, but we saw some stuff from that. And then mentioned really briefly Dawn of the Jedi, right? But they said nothing else. The James Mangold written and directed Jedi and Force origin story, the biblical epic that it's been described as. And then the new Jedi Order movie, the post-sequel era Rey-focused film directed by Sharmeen Obaid-Chinoy.
Which we didn't get anything from that
mention.
Celebration. No.
There's been talks about rewrites and things, which is standard.
Right. So, there's something, well, Nick, I mean, from your perspective, Adam and I talked about our immediate reactions to this while we were in Japan, but what's your rundown when you see that, that list of kind of a multiverse of media options there for you?
I mean, I love it. To me, leaning into animation is great. This is, by 2 to 1 more anime than the kind of, what we're used to with Lucasfilm animation, with the whole Clone Wars style and Bad Batch and all that, which Maul is. So, yeah, I mean, I just personally would be leaning into this way more. The animation, if it's too big of a risk or too much of an undertaking to do television and movies or one or the other, like there's so many people who would love the animation. We say this all the time. So, yeah, I just want more. It's not even as a podcaster. It's just more as like thinking of like a fire, keeping a fire going. It's like right now it's very weird. Like to think that like COVID was like almost the height of Disney Plus, like Star Wars storytelling is bizarre because like I know the strike for sure has affected things, but I think we're coming out of that time frame where the writer's strike was affecting things. I think we're like just coming out of that. So yeah, animation. I could. All of this is great. Like if it was anime and the Lucasfilm style plus a show plus a movie, like that would be the perfect like Star Wars year for me.
I think. I mean, I'm with you on that. I think that we do have to. I think that they've been making the right call by really hyping up the theatrical experience again in Star Wars, because like think of how well Revenge of the Sith did from a box office standpoint. Like it was
Mhm.
in theaters for about 2 weeks and it actually like crushed.
Yeah.
Like the experience for people to go sit in a movie theater and see lightsabers and see uh, ships and Mando, like this is going to be really great. And I think for people, it's like we have experienced both long form storytelling, but somehow with like if you look at some of the movies that have done really well, I think people, I don't know, at least from my perspective, people seem to be pretty excited about Fantastic Four. People, at least on my side of things, it feels like I'm excited for Jurassic Park this summer. Like there is a lot of reason to get excited about going back to the movies. I know a lot of people, like for me, it's like Lilo and Stitch. I'm going to take, my daughter to go see Lilo and Stitch on Saturday to get her kind of also into the idea that like going to the movies is fun. Like you see it on a screen that's giant and you get to like just be kind of wowed by the experience. And so I think that they're making the right call by doing the park tie-in, by having new experiences at the park. But I think, we're kind of looking at like Star Wars's net is so wide at this point that I can understand why it feels like certain things, the balance of the scale can get off very easily because we're going to get an Emmy nominated series out of Andor. And then we're going to get park tie-ins and new merch and all this stuff from Mando Grogu. And I could totally understand how something like Maul Shadow Lord is going to be amazing and almost feel like it just gets swept under the rug because Star Wars is going everywhere right now. You know what I mean?
Yeah. These are immense, nearly unsolvable problems and equations when it comes to how to release things, how to make a workable return on investment, because the world is so different post-pandemic, and we are like firmly into a place. This has been talked about for a decade now, but we are firmly in a place where this is the full reality for any theatrical film. You're going to spend as much on marketing as you do on the budget of the whole film, because feature films are competing with everything now. We've talked about this so much, competing with TikTok and Instagram on your phone. Not to mention all of the endless content that we all have that none of us can even keep up with on all these streaming services, which is all so great. Even the stuff that sucks is so great
Yeah.
compared to years ago. So it's a really tough nut to crack, and it makes so much sense. I don't blame Lucasfilm and Disney for a second for leaning into The Mandalorian and making a Mando and Grogu feature film. One,
Right.
to your point about seeing things in the theater, it's amazing, and I'm stoked to do that. And two, it's
Right.
just the obvious best choice. So Maul, yeah, that's gonna fly under the radar, but so did Clone Wars. Like all
Right.
that stuff always kind of flew under the radar. It was cheaper to make. You go back and watch the behind the scenes stuff like we talked about when we broke all that down. There was a hard cap on just like the budget for render time
Sure.
on the servers that would render out those animations. They said, even the live action Disney Plus series, how can we make this fast and cheap and great?
Right.
It turns out you can do all three, but also luckily the range, the upper range of good to great is pretty tall,
Right.
So I think it's easy to get bummed because we're not getting stuff constantly. But if you look back to the mid 2000s, prior to before the prequels were announced, there were many
Yeah.
years where what do we get? Books and video games?
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
It's a pretty great time.
Yeah. Well, and that's we're getting, I think from the perspective of also knowing like we have gotten so used to the kind of like megacorp approach to how things are, right? Where like we've got I just saw the other day, it's like you can get early access to see Superman like 3 days earlier if you're an Amazon Prime member.
Whoa.
You get to go see it early at certain theaters, right? And I'm like, so they must have had to figure out they're risking potentially a lot of people seeing this movie early for clearly some handshake between Warner Brothers and Amazon to release this movie. And
that's probably a marketing play too.
Yeah,
Like to
100%.
get people
Right.
out there.
Right. And because that, you always like go into this thing where you're like, oh, is it because they're really confident in the movie? They think it's going to be great. And that's why it was like you could almost see like the approach of going, we're not sure how this is going to go. But then also at the same time, all I was reading on the subreddits that I'm on, people were like, Thunderbolts is gonna tank. Yet I've heard from lots and lots of people that Thunderbolts is like their favorite MCU movie as of recent.
It got incredible reviews. Everyone's so pumped on it.
I just saw it and it's good, but I think people are pumped on it because it's like an upward trajectory, like everything else, every other Marvel thing has been like, this one's like, okay, that was good, right? That was good.
Right.
So it seems like it's promising,
Sure. But in some points though, it's like, it's not a disaster from your perspective. I mean, I'll eventually see it on Disney Plus at the end of the month or whenever it comes out, but like, you know what I mean? Like we've gotten to this point where everything, Adam has said this multiple times, where everything has to be amazing or it's just absolute garbage,
If it's not a hit single, it's the worst song I've ever heard.
100%. Yeah. And so like
that's movie and TV goers.
Yeah, without a doubt. And we've gotten to this point where, if you were to actually look at the difference of like Apple is losing $1 billion in their streaming service right now.
It's a loss leader. They don't care.
Well, they don't. Oh, yeah, sure. But like comparatively from a business standpoint, they're like, we've got Severance. See ya. You know what I mean?
Our brand is cool. Check out our show.
Our brand is Severance. You know what I mean? You're like, that's crazy. Okay, it's amazing. And then they do great other shows like
Foundation comes out in July.
Yeah. So like, you know what I mean? Like, but they have people who are into this stuff, and Star Wars is such a like feast or famine brand that I feel like when you go to something like Celebration, you feel like you are in the room with all the people who are choosing to feast. And then from that standpoint, as we go on with saying, we just came over this humongous roller coaster of how we all felt about Andor. Now we're at this point of laying out, is our work as fans to get as many young fans to watch season 1, season 2, season 3 of Mandalorian? Are we going back and revisiting Book of Boba Fett in case Boba Fett shows up in this movie? Like, you go back and start thinking like, what do we do to prepare? We have a year to prepare. How do you do this as fans of the brand? Get people excited to go see Star Wars in the movie theater. But this one's different because it almost requires 3 seasons of backstory for you to understand how they got to this point.
Yeah.
With a tie-in that hasn't come out yet for another character that you have to watch their show. You know what I mean? So you're like, man, this is for people who are super fans. We're all about it. But what is the story of getting someone so excited that they would go to Star Wars Celebration in LA in 2027? That's the question.
It's so interesting to me to think about where we were about 10 years ago when the Marvel Cinematic Universe was just blowing everyone's minds, exceeding all expectations in terms of a first ever, absolutely top tier, full continuity series of films that build upon each other and create this larger universe in a way that has never been executed. Had never been executed prior to that. Everyone started pursuing that. Star Wars always had it because Lucas had his canon. The expanded universe wasn't canon per se, and there was very little that had been made beyond the first 9 films. 10 years ago, we were just barely into the Disney era, right? So Star Wars was pulling it off. Everyone else started trying it. DC was trying it, more or less success.
Right.
Probably less.
We've had 8 Batman since I've been alive. Like, what's
Right.
going on here? You know what I mean?
And now I think we're at the point where, like, I don't think we're just superhero fatigue. I don't think we're just Star Wars fatigue. I don't think it's any of those specifically. I think it's a different way to articulate what you're saying, Mike, about what you have to catch up with, and for
Mhm.
the normies, what the homework has to be. It's like, what do you call it? Like, connected universe fatigue is what I
Mm,
would call it.
mm.
I think that now is something that maybe isn't as appealing to people outside of like the diehards, the super nerds. I
Sure.
think that the casual fan wants to see some new show on Netflix that has nothing to do with anything and get pumped on it. And when binge it, and when it's done, they're done.
There's definitely something to that because I think, again, as someone who like I, I don't remember who I think it was in Japan. Someone was trying to tell me that the John Wick movies are awesome.
There's probably
They're
Desi.
pretty cool. Yeah.
Was it Desi?
Desi loves that shit. Yeah.
Okay, she loves John Wick. It was Desi. We were
Every
sitting
time
at
Every
And
time you
there's a
guys are
new one
making out,
coming
she's
out.
like, "Oh God, I love making out with you, but if you could just shoot a bunch of guys, it would be so much better."
right. Grow your hair out long, and
There's
I
like
hope
a
no one
side
kills Finn.
story, like Ballerina. I think it's coming.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
coming out.
yeah.
Yeah. So
Okay.
they're already like.
So like
franchising them.
I have long made fun of this franchise for just being violence born because I can't tell the difference between Man on Fire, The Equalizer, John Wick. I don't know what's going on with any of this stuff. But I know that there's a lot of people who like to go shooty, and people are like, I'm into this stuff, right? Okay. So you almost look back on it and go, there are 5 John Wick movies now with spin-offs. That's still only about 10 hours of story footage,
Mhm.
right? That was barely season 1 of The Mandalorian.
Yeah.
But in 2-hour chunks, right?
Yeah.
So you're almost thinking like is in some ways our short attention spans not designed for streaming, ironically enough, to the point where if we would have had a Mando movie, introduction movie, if we would have had a Mando part 2 movie and a Mando part 3, and then it leads up to this big debacle we're going to have with Thrawn, Ahsoka, all of these characters, like would that have made more, like to your point, Adam, would that have changed how we view Star Wars if you call it connected universe fatigue, which I think is a great way to think about it? Would
Or
that
franchise fatigue? To
yeah,
use
yeah, yeah.
alliteration.
Like, would that have actually made more sense? Because like, why is John Wick on movie 5? Like, who is paying extensive money for this? And I know that Star Wars is expensive.
Or Fast and Furious 9, for that matter.
Are these movies
people who got on that bandwagon from movie 1? You can't really say that about Star Wars, like
Yeah.
that is something that's part of the puzzle here,
Yeah,
it's like
it
I
is.
saw John Wick 1, of course I'm going to see John Wick 2. If a new Star Wars comes out, but like when is this movie? That's everyone's biggest question. Like, when in the timeline is this movie?
But then going back to Iron Man 1 came out in what, 2007?
Sounds right.
Sounds right.
Something like that.
2008.
I think it was 7.
It was so good that everybody watched it and said, okay, I'm on. But like, we also gloss over how, in my opinion, bad the Hulk movies were, how actually bad like Thor 1, Thor 2 wasn't. I didn't think Thor was that rad until Ragnarok. We look at like Winter Soldier was really great, but like the first Captain America was okay, right? The second Iron Man was fine. The third Iron Man, you know what I mean? Like, so like we kind of have like almost like collective gloss over looking at those as individual movies because we have such an appreciation for the universe. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Because like we look at that and go, everything ended up with Endgame or Infinity War and Endgame, which everybody who was a fan of the MCU was like, boom, that's how you do it. So it's kind of interesting at how like if I don't remember what it was like, and I hope people in the comments will say something, but like, did we think that every time that Thor 2, The Dark World, I don't even remember what it was about, but I remember that Christopher Eccleston was like, was the bad guy, an amazing actor. And I remember they buried him under all this weird makeup. And I was like, okay, what did I just watch? Right. Did I go online and say the MCU is dead?
No.
You know what I mean? It's like, that's what I'm saying. Like,
there's no point to doing that. God. Yeah.
you know, but we're just kind of at this point where it's like, you know, nothing could hold a candle to Iron Man 1. And there were certainly differences, and people have motives for liking what they like. But like, it's kind of this interesting perspective on going, like, after the dust has settled, will people really want to go back into Mando's back catalog? Will people watch the movie just because Star Wars is back in the theater? Will there be any setup for, like, will they be able to basically establish that this is a new story that you might be able to enjoy and love without knowing what got Mando to this point?
I hope they can do that, because what I was going to say to both of you was, and to the world for that matter, Star Wars is something special. It's similar to Marvel in that ultimately you can kind of just jump in and grab any one story that happens to appeal to you, whether it's, you know, like a young Muslim girl, or a muscly black dude from a made up country in the middle of nowhere, or a white dude that looks like, you know, like the dudes on posters in World War II propaganda. Whatever appeals to you, you can jump in there and vibe with it. And yes, it all ties in, but it doesn't necessarily have to.
Sure.
There are certain films, like, you shouldn't go watch, you know, you shouldn't jump into any of the last few Avengers films without revisiting some stuff beforehand. Yes,
Right.
there are exceptions, but generally speaking, like, I feel like you can just watch Ahsoka and it's okay. I think the anxiety around what do I need, what homework do I need to do, isn't always warranted. And Filoni even brought it up. He just casually, just off the cuff, you know, in a like a throwaway line in the middle of some other something, he talked about, you know, finding a way to write Ahsoka that, you know, feels like it can stand alone, and you talk about all this stuff, but it doesn't matter. You know, Obi-Wan's talking about the Clone Wars and shit in 1977. Nobody knew what the hell that was. You just moved along. You just accepted, oh, some cool stuff happened in the past. Let me hear about what's going on now.
Right.
But now we all have this franchise fatigue that gives us anxiety about what we don't know about, what we missed. And it's almost overwhelming to even consider jumping in, whether or not it's actually founded.
Which is funny, but you just said, which is founded. Like, when has that ever happened? When has anyone ever been like, oh my God, this movie was terrible because I didn't know what was going on? Like, when does that happen? It just actually doesn't happen. You know, it's like this like almost like handed down to us, this like narrative that doesn't exist. Yeah. It's like, I just actually, I'm talking about it in the Discord right now. There were one or two things in the Thunderbolts movie that made me remember that I didn't see Captain America, which came out a couple of months ago. And guess what? I was fine. Like, it was totally okay.
You're like, wait a minute. Who is this Captain America? I've never seen this guy.
Totally fine.
Right.
Like, did anyone watch Top Gun Maverick and go, wait a minute, who's this woman at the bar?
Right. Well, like, right. Because
like Jill, she was like, that was
there goes
amazing.
The whole movie.
Yeah. Like, she used to watch Top Gun, the original, with me, kind of just like tongue in cheek, and just sit there and laugh at like these sweaty dudes just like
fire.
Yeah, just
playing with the.
Okay, if you love this, cool. But she watched Maverick and she was like, that was an amazing movie. Right. So who was the woman in the bar? Like, are we supposed to know about her? That was just like an afterthought to that was an amazing movie.
Right. Right.
And also, like,
you don't need to know.
Cool. You're like people who have a question who don't take that as a negative thing are like, oh, I should go watch Top Gun. I should go rent it. I should go buy it. You know, I should read something about it. Like, that's part of all of this. You know, it's like most people, 90% of people, probably if not more, are just going to move on with their life. But you want to make fans, and you want to like water the seeds of your fandom. It's like you need to make new fans too. Like you can't just put everything on a plate for people. And all of these franchises kind of do though,
Right.
and then our minds are blown when Andor comes out because it's like makes you think, like it's not all fully just like here's everything on a plate. It's like you have to pay attention. You couldn't be on your phone while you watched Andor. Like it just couldn't do it.
Yes.
So it's like, and people liked it, it's like, again, we say this every week, but we don't want everything to be like that, but people can handle it.
Well, did anyone watch the Godzilla series?
I saw the
got-
one that
yeah,
what's
it's
his
got-
name made.
It's got Wyatt Russell in it, who's the U.S. agent.
Oh, the series.
The series on Apple TV, right? No.
-1 or whatever it's called.
No, that's the Japanese movie. It was called I don't know. Someone say it in the comments, but it was basically a series that was connecting how they connected Godzilla and King Kong, right? And they're like, this group of scientists is basically like going back into the 70s to kind of connect while they went to Skull Island, all this stuff, right? That. So like at the time, I'm like, okay, I don't think I've seen the latest one with Godzilla and King Kong. They're friends. It's called Monarch. Thank you, Luke. It was, I'm sitting here being like, I'm a very casual fan. I like loved Godzilla growing up, but like I'm a person who I feel like sits outside of this universe, and the fact that I'm not going to go see them day one in the movie theaters anymore, right? But like I'm watching it because I'm watching it.
Hey,
and I'm watching it here. But like you get to a point where you're going, yeah, they're putting content out here that it's fine. It's cool. Godzilla was in it for probably about a total of like 9 minutes, I think, of this whole 12 episode season. And you're kind of like sitting here being like, I'm not going to go to the internet and being like, kaiju movies are dead. Because then Godzilla -1 comes out and everyone's like, this is the greatest thing I've seen since 1990s or whatever, or whenever the last time that they love one of the Japanese movies. And it takes just a second for people to get back on board. It should. Yeah, it should. And Star Wars has always been kind of put in this like unfair light of being like everything has to be amazing, when I think like at some point we don't appreciate how wide the net is that Star Wars is casting continually and maintaining a single story timeline.
Yeah.
Because that's another thing that all of these industries kind of get to do, is they get to just say, oh, here's something completely different. We've got a new Batman that just came out where Bruce Wayne is actually not a billionaire. That's in a comic book right now. And he's like made his own suit and he's actually like trying to fight his way up the crime family.
So it's a from scratch reboot?
Yeah, and DC has done this all the time. Like it's like every couple of years they're like, yeah, new Batman. And they're allowed to kind of do this. And the fact that like this Superman that's coming out is a completely new relaunch. Completely new. There is no Batman in this universe yet. You know what I mean? And so this is after there's an independent Batman elsewhere, as James Gunn is calling it. So you're sitting here being like, there's some of these franchises just get to like do something new. Or if you're Marvel, you're like, just call it a multiverse and anything can happen. So it's just an interesting case of us getting excited about things when I think at some point it takes so little to get people back on board in regards of like what we should be excited about. Because I am looking at that celebration slate and being like, dude, this is like I'm sad that we're in the dry spell, but I'm equally excited for the news that we're going to get by the end of the year of new projects that are coming out and what progress has been made on the projects that we were part of at Celebration.
Agreed. I'll say one more thing. Go ahead,
for
Nick.
it. Me? Who talks first?
You talk first. You talk first.
I think too, and I'll put this back to like a music business thing, especially with my band, but like it comes from a place of for Disney, I'm speaking of like financial privilege, because they can make money elsewhere right now. And like right now, it seems like Marvel's on a little bit of an uptick. They have a lot of different things coming out. So they could be like, Star Wars fans will just, it's going to be so good in a year when Mando comes out. It's going to be huge. Instead of being like, let's put a bunch of stuff out that's all marginally successful. They're going to have a big, huge hit in a year. And they can do that because they have money coming in elsewhere. And I'll like set the parallel to like Bayside, where I'm like, we have to put out a record every like 3 years at this point. We cannot, the best thing for our band right now would be to just not do anything for 5 years. You know, like just straight up stay home. Guess what? It's our career and we have to make money every year, you know. But the best thing, if we wanted to have the best shows we ever had, would be not play for 5 years and come back.
Also officially break up.
Yeah, like we'll just
Nice.
Yeah,
Nice.
exactly.
It's a strategy at this point.
Yeah, well, it is for a lot of people, but for other bands. But
Motley
parallel
Crue, the
there,
reunion
you know,
tour, part 2.
Like for me, the parallel is like it's a financial like privilege that they have, that they could be like, we're just going to take things light for the next year. It's been nonstop for really since The Force Awakens came out. It's been nonstop for the most part. And maybe we all got comfortable with that's how things were going to be, and we'd have stuff to talk about all the time. But like for them to basically take kind of a year off, you know, I mean, we have stuff that's going to be coming out, but it's nowhere on the scale of a theatrical release or even a Disney Plus series. But they're making money elsewhere, so they get to have the scarcity, this like fake scarcity, because they can financially. But like,
wait it out.
If they needed money, they wouldn't be doing that, you know. And I know they need money, but not the way Bayside needs money.
They need to be strategic and smart about their storytelling, because there is so much out there. You know, they have the parks. We can all go play around in Batu. They're launching new things. That's the other thing we didn't mention. Celebration also clued us in on some updates coming to the parks with the new Smuggler's Run stories and things. I mean, you think about the 16 years between Return of the Jedi and The Phantom Menace. You think about the 7 years between the Force Awakens and Disney acquiring Lucasfilm, and then another 3 years before we got The Force Awakens. That's a lot of downtime. Like we had scraps and we had a bunch of books, some of which were just like bonkers and some that were great, but it was like this thing that happened in the past that people were still obsessed about versus a thing that's actively going now. So yeah, we're spoiled.
Yeah. Well, and then you
TLDR, we're spoiled.
Yeah, true. And I think too, at some point, looking at it from, you still have your fan-driven experiences too, right? Like, did you watch what happened with this Battlefront 2 thing?
In Battlefront 3, the campaign to
So basically, everyone's like bombard the Battlefront 2 servers, and Battlefront 2 has had the most amount of players it's ever had, even since the game came out in 7 years ago at this point. So they're trying, the fans are like, literally, they understand that like a lot of these companies talk in money. And so if you want to show the demand it, right? And I don't know what that means. I know that next year Grand Theft Auto is going to be a cultural phenomenon. It comes out a week before Mando Grogu, which is crazy if it doesn't get bumped back again. But it's really one of these things where you're looking at it from a perspective of going, you know, Jurassic Park is coming out in July 3rd. They have done wild stuff with that franchise that has gotten so far from the original Michael Crichton based novel, right? And people have like begrudgingly also gone along with that one. And
yeah, I still saw them all, even though I didn't totally love the most recent trilogy.
Yeah,
I was there.
Yeah, exactly. And you look at how like even Independence Day, which is widely revered as a great science fiction 90s movie, Will Smith, Jeff Goldblum, Randy Quaid before he was totally off the deep end. But the aliens, you know, like they try to make a second movie that was terrible, but they did it and then realized quickly, like, oh, the people have not, they've gotten quiet about this. People are still fired up about Jurassic Park. There's a show on Netflix, an animated show on Netflix. Like the if the desire is there, I feel like at least the studios can have a finger on the pulse of what they want to do. And I think that we just happen to be experiencing, after an absolute bazooka of content since 2019, this is like finally where they're going, all right, everyone just hang out for a second. And they're not even hanging out. They're literally editing what is going to be probably one of the coolest things that we've seen, with Star Wars coming back to the theater for the first time since 2019 in regards of new storytelling. So like, I don't know. The more I talk about it, the more excited I am, the more that I know that I just need to stay alive for 365 days.
Yeah.
Okay. That's what my focus is.
Yeah. I want a movie every year for sure. But we used to have to wait 3 years between movies for any given trilogy. And now we get all this stuff in between, and we have the parks. Woosah, everybody.
What if?
Tell myself woosah also.
Do you think this is reasonable?
Okay.
Theatrical release in May.
Okay.
Maybe a 12-episode animated thing. I'm just going to start from January. 12 weeks of animation, which leads you to have like a little break until May, where a theatrical release comes in, and then August, September, Disney Plus live action show. That covers most of the year and doesn't seem like that much. It's different facets of work, you know, like it's live action, it's theatrical, it's animation.
Yeah.
We would have, so that actually sounds like less than what we're getting, but that would cover the whole year.
Well,
yeah,
didn't we?
There's so many factors though, like schedules for people, like
Right.
Filoni's developing this movie and throwing stories at the animation crew to get like Underworld and Maul and all that kind of stuff. Favreau's on this, Favreau's on that, you know, like directors coming and going, writers coming and going, scheduling the actors, scheduling the releases, delays, you know, award season, like it's gnarly.
It's a lot. I mean, is there something to be said for, you know, do we, of course, like I can't figure out, people are just outright sharing fake news about entertainment at this point to try to get, it's incredible, right? It's blatant.
We talked about this years ago. I feel like it's better to put out a fake story than like when there's a vacuum, like there's nothing going on and you need your clicks because it's your life on YouTube or it's your life on Instagram or whatever. Yeah, put out some fake shit because you need your livelihood. It's your livelihood at this point.
Right.
To that, I would say, get alive.
Sure. Touch grass, pal. But I'm like, you know, I heard that they were considering doing a like theatrical cut of Andor season 2 that led into Rogue One. Tony Gilroy approved, right? And I was like, okay, that actually that sounds pretty cool, right?
What didn't someone else do that? Didn't another series do that? Oh no, it was the reverse. Hateful Eight got turned into a series. The extended
on HBO.
Yeah, and this has been years now, right?
Sure.
It's like the director's cut instead of being a 4-hour film or whatever. It's like a 4-part miniseries.
Sure. So something like that, I'm curious if they might do that for, like, I think when we had Kai Patterson on, right? This is just a fan who's just, I mean, sure, he added a lot of stuff that he wanted to see personally, but like in terms of just doing a supercut, I don't mind that. I don't mind a Mando 2.5 hour supercut of getting Mando on his journey, meeting Luke, and then ending up at the homestead at the end. Like, you want to put something out in February to get people excited for the movie? Like, I'm in. Put it on Disney Plus. I'm in.
To me, that sounds like a brilliant thing to roll into the marketing budget and kind of make more money back by it all being part of one giant marketing budget, which then maths out in the way that Hollywood maths things out.
Right.
Yeah, that sounds sick.
Yeah.
That sounds super sick.
Yeah.
They could
So
do 3 films. They could do a trilogy of Mandalorian movies, series cut down.
just on supercuts of the
Yeah.
the seasons. Yeah. That's
Do
a
you
great
guys know
idea.
about this thing with Hollywood movies? How essentially, they're budgeted in a way. They're like each movie is created as like a corporation. Like it is a
Right.
company. The
Right.
movie becomes a company, and the whole idea is to make it not make money on paper.
Yes, creative bookkeeping or Hollywood bookkeeping, right?
Yeah,
Where it,
by paying different departments of your own company as much as possible to get
Right.
the net down to zero.
right, so that you don't have to pay any taxes on it, and
pay-
everything's a write off.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And certainly, I know that right now, this is what the people in charge are looking at for sure. But I would just say, all in all, like, I mean, I think for people who are watching and kind of coming off that super high from Celebration, coming off, if you weren't able to go to Celebration, you're coming off the Andor high. You know, I think it's a good, as you said, Adam, woosah, to just remind ourselves that, like, even if you want to go back into the back catalog, do you know how much stuff has come out since 2019? Like, I'm probably, I restarted watching Skeleton Crew already. I
Sick.
restarted watching Rebels with my daughter. There's so much great content out there that rewatching it just makes me happy. So it's like,
Yeah.
I can burn through a year.
My rewatch
Star
has
Wars.
been like my middle of the night, like, and I was not expecting this, but I just woke up and was like, I got to put something on to go back to bed to distract me. And it was episode 9, 10, 11, 12 of Andor.
Nice.
And that did not put me to sleep, I'll tell you that much.
I was gonna say, I was like, you put on the most stressful episodes to go to sleep. That's nice. I wonder why you're bad at sleeping now.
Dude,
I was
speaking of that,
just, oof, boy, is that good.
sorry, because we need to wrap up. I'll divert us to something else before we do it. I watched. Well, I don't want to spoil anything. I watched The Last of Us, the most recent episode, which was it the finale. Finale.
Yeah.
Already?
Finale was
Yeah.
on Sunday.
I still have to watch it, but yeah, it was the finale.
7th episode was the finale.
I think it was 8 or 9, no?
Maybe it was 9. I don't know. Anyway, there was a boat involved. Anyone?
No, I know I'm
I
one
haven't
behind,
watched
so
the
you
season.
probably watched the finale,
Okay.
I would say.
I had a terrible nightmare because I watched that shit right before I went to sleep, and the edible was kicking in as I was finishing. I definitely lived an episode of The Last of Us in my sleep. So, Nick,
Nice.
don't do that
Nice.
anymore. With
Yeah.
all right, we're going to wrap up. We are going to, in the bonus segment for patrons, we're going to talk about what future project we could pull from the slate, or we could talk about maybe some of the things that were announced and then canceled or kind of left on the vine. What would be our top pick to get the Andor sort of prestige TV, prestige drama treatment?
Mm-hmm.
What character, what story would we like to see in that vein going forward? We're going to talk about that in the bonus segment for patrons, which is something that you can find at patreon.com/thankthemakerpod for a mere $5 a month.
Just $5.
That's it. A little more if you want merch or something else, but that's it. All right, folks. We appreciate everyone, especially the patrons. We'll see you in a little bit. And until everyone and everyone else, until next week, may the force be with you. Thank the Maker is produced by Adam Russell and Jason Chiodo, and edited by Jason Chiodo. If you enjoy the podcast, you can support us by leaving a review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen. Or you can support us directly at patreon.com/thankthemakerpod, where you can get access to our Discord server, exclusive content, exclusive merch, and more. Our patrons literally make Thank the Maker possible.